Today I'm going to talk about the 3 lessons I learned at my Great Smoky Mountains workshop last week. Last week I was in the Great Smoky Mountains leading a landscape photography workshop with Michael Rung. And after a workshop, I like to take some time to look back at the workshop and think about what went well, what are areas that I could improve, and just were there any recurring themes that seemed to surface? Something that we felt like we were constantly teaching or trying to expose people to, not so much from the camera setting side of the world or the composition side of the world, but just more some of those things you don't really think to ask. And that's where the thought for this video came from. I'm going to highlight 3 of the things that I think were important recurring themes to that workshop that came out of it. Now I'm going to try to keep this video on the short side. You would think after 3.5 years or so of doing YouTube videos, I would remember to take way more B-roll video than I did. And unfortunately, this video is going to be a little bit more talking head than I would like. But I do want to cover these 3 things because I think it's important and I think it can help landscape photographers. So let's get into it. First up, weather. Now, when Michael and I were out there and scouting, we had some pretty decent weather, partly cloudy skies. The temperatures were a little on the warm side, but we really weren't facing much precipitation or anything like that. But when you know it, at the time we were going to meet for orientation, it was an absolute downpour. And that was really sort of the theme for the rest of the workshop, is we were pretty consistently dodging rain showers, dodging thunderstorms, and just working around the weather and trying to deal with it. Now, I really don't mind poor weather. I find that some of the more interesting photographs come from adverse conditions. But when you're leading a landscape photography workshop, people have different ideas in mind of what good weather is and what isn't, and a little bit less tolerance for discomfort. So in order to try to maximize things, Michael and I, we would sort of triangulate across 3 weather apps, trying to match what the predicted weather was at a certain time of the day, for example, early in the morning or in the evening, to a location that would be best served by that weather. So for example, if it's going to be overcast, maybe a little drizzly, we might go towards some streams or something like that because they're a little easier to photograph with some overcast. The rain might bring some interesting atmosphere, and those conditions probably weren't going to be the greatest for a brilliant sunrise or sunset. Likewise, if it looked like it was going to be partly cloudy, or maybe we're getting some clearing skies, then maybe we would target like an overlook so that we could get those sunrises, sunsets. And we did that for about the first half of the workshop. We would have a location list. We'd be like, if the weather's looking like it's doing this, we're going to go here. If it looks like it's doing that, we're going here. And I'll tell you, what ended up happening every time was we would look at the weather, we would think we would know what was coming, we'd make a choice, and the weather didn't really materialize to that point. Maybe it was calling for heavy rain and we just got overcast skies, or maybe we didn't see any rain at all. But really what that led me to was just sort of disregarding the weather apps. It was really sort of causing a analysis paralysis situation where we're trying to look at 3 sources, figure out which one we thought was the most likely forecast, and then choosing a location. By the end of the workshop, I got to the point where I was like, we got to look at the weather just mainly so we can be prepared. Knowing what the weather's going to be like for safety is good. If you've got severe storms coming in and you see them on the radar, you do want to be careful of that. So I'm not saying ignore the weather, but I switched to prioritizing location first and then just giving some instructions to the workshop folks about what to prepare for. So for example, one evening we went to a stream and it was calling for a little bit of rain. And I just warned people, we're going to do some stream photography this evening. We're going to be hiking, so we're not going to have easy access back to the cars. So make sure to pack a little bit of rain gear, something for the cameras, a towel to dry them off, or something like that. So essentially, weather is important. Weather is important to know for your safety. But I found it much more liberating to sort of focus on the location and just be informed of the weather to be prepared for photographing in that particular situation. So for that stream situation, that heavy rain never really materialized. It was just sort of no rain for a while and then a light drizzle, and we had an amazing time out there. So when you're out there photographing, especially if you've traveled somewhere, you can get discouraged by the weather pretty easily, or you can find yourself nose deep in a weather app trying to figure out where you should go and stressing about it. And I found by the end of the workshop, just choosing a location, then checking the weather to at least have some awareness of what could be coming, preparing for that, and then going to that location worked out the best in the end. So just be real careful about getting stuck in this decision analysis and the stress of this constant evaluation of the weather and worrying about, did you choose the right way or did you not choose the right way? Just choose your location, look at the weather apps to be prepared, and head on out. Next is first impressions of a scene. This is one that even Michael and I experienced during our pre-scouting. Here's how this sort of unfolds, is we would be driving along and we'd see something that caught our interest. And in this one particular case, it was a dogwood with this nice little structured tree next to it, and we both thought that would be interesting to photograph. So we stopped. And in our heads, I think we were both sort of like, okay, we'll get a long lens out, we'll work a couple compositions, we'll be here 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll move on down the road and find something else. But in that particular case, we started photographing that particular scene. And the moment we stopped the car, got outside, and started experiencing the scene, your eyes start to look around because we were open to photographing other things beyond what we stopped for. And on that particular morning, I photographed some turkeys. They pretty much just wandered up to me, and I took some pictures. I'm not a wildlife photographer, but if wildlife's going to wander up for me to take their picture, I'll take their picture. So in this case, I had some turkeys I took pictures of. And as I continued to watch, I looked behind me. And the sun was coming up, and there was these clouds off in the hills, the mountains off to the side. And it just started doing some really interesting things on the hillside. And I ended up going over there and shooting with a wide lens and a zoom lens, shooting this light playing across those mountains. And then there were other tree structures and things like that in the area. And this, what was going to be essentially a 15, 20-minute stop, turned into an hour and 15-minute, hour and a half stop of photographing just all of these things around us. And that happened multiple times on this workshop, both with the pre-scouting aspect, where we'd stop for what looked like one interesting scene, but ended up really absorbing it once we got out there and seeing these other scenes. And I saw it happen with our workshop clients as well. This particular one, we stopped at this Cascades, and there's this one predominant cascade that we stopped near, happened to be the one right across in the parking lot. So we walk over there and we're like, hey, we're going to photograph these cascades for a little bit. And you can just see the looks in their eye. It was a relatively small cascade in this one section. And you could see they're like, oh, okay. And, you know, we tell them, we'll spend 10, 15 minutes here. And if people don't seem engaged or interested, we'll move on. Next thing you know, it's like an hour, 15 minutes later, hour and a half later. And we've got people spread up and down this stream, photographing things higher up, photographing things lower down, photographing flowers off to the side. And I think it's just another one of those things that would have been super easy to drive by this particular spot or just hop out of your car, take a picture of this and move on. But as soon as you find yourself staying there for just a little bit longer, you become much more in tune with what's there, what is unfolding in front of you, and you start to notice these smaller things. All it takes is just slowing down that little bit to start to notice them. And so I guess the lesson from here is just be very careful of your first impression of a scene. While one subject might pull you in to get you to stop, take the time to look around, absorb the scene. There's a good chance when you do, you're going to see all sorts of other interesting photographs to take. So don't underestimate a scene when you stop. And the last one, be careful of chasing the light. Now this one sort of ties into the weather because a lot of times chasing the light involves, chasing the clouds. It's going to be dappled light, fog, everything like that. But in this particular case, we'd been spending the afternoon working our way up a series of overlooks higher and higher up the mountain with the intent of stopping off at Kauai, the highest point in the park, to get a sunset photo. And we worked our way up these overlooks. And as we got higher up, the clouds started to drop down. We started to get more fog, got more overcast. And by the time we got to Kauai, it was essentially in a cloud bank. We pulled into the parking lot. It was thick cloud. You could see maybe 5-10 feet off the overlook. You certainly couldn't see all the layers you wanted to see, and you weren't going to see the sunset. You could barely see cars further down in the parking lot. And we sat there, and I'm here internally debating, wow, we brought them here for a sunset, and there is not going to be a sunset right now. Sure, there's going to be some fog photography up there with the trees that were close by, but there wasn't going to be a sunset. There wasn't going to be these great layers or anything like that. So in my head, I'm thinking, wow, do we just sort of cut our losses and go ahead and head down a little lower and hope that we can catch one of those lower overlooks and maybe get in under the clouds? Or do we hang out here? And I had this little voice in my head going, don't chase the light. I've done other videos and I've talked about this in the past, but I'm always very leery of chasing the light. I find it often leads to more frustration than not. But when you've got a group of people there depending on you to have them in a scenic location, that temptation starts to become really strong. So I pondered and I thought, and I looked at my watch, and I was trying to think if I drive down, and what if it's worse down there? And what if we leave and it suddenly clears up here? All these things are going through my mind, and I finally decided just to stick with it and not chase the light. So I let the group know, hey, we're going to wait this out. We're going to see what happens. My hope is this cloud's going to sort of slip off the ridge and we're going to get some scenes. Right now, if you want, go ahead and start taking some fog photos. We pointed out a couple trees are interested in the fog, both, down the hillside and all around us. And I'm typically pretty prepared to make people hot drinks when we wait for things. So in this particular case, we made some coffee, we made some hot tea, and we talked amongst each other. We met some people that were next to us and we talked to them a little bit about, they were cooking ramen off of their jet boils. And, we had these conversations, killed about 45 minutes that way. And finally, one of my clients goes, hey, it's starting to clear off over this way. So we put our cups away and we started wandering around this overlook. Kauai, if you haven't been there, has these great views, about 180 degrees of views that you can look at from this overlook. And sure enough, you could start to see down the valley. The clouds had started to move off. And while it looked like we weren't going to get some amazing color in the sky, we definitely had the Great Smoky Mountains layers to photograph. And we worked our way from one side to the other. And we ended up having a really great time capturing those images. And a little later in this trip, I actually ran into some other photographers who had been down at the overlook I was considering going to if I decided to chase the light. And they said they'd actually gotten fogged in and didn't have a sunset to photograph that evening at all. So again, what this comes down to is chasing the light can be really, really tempting because like if I just go down here, I'll get this amazing picture. But in this particular case, we chose not to chase the light and just wait it out. And it all paid off. So again, that's the lesson here. Just be really careful chasing the light. Sometimes you're better off to just commit to a location and watch it unfold. Worst case, you just sort of get to enjoy being out in nature. In this particular case, we had lots of people to have conversations with, and there's a little bit of just humor to this, hey, we're in the middle of this cloud bank for sunset. And you just have to sort of laugh at that and just enjoy it. Best case is it pans out and we ended up walking away with some great Smoky Mountain layers pictures. So be careful of the frenetic pace of just chasing light. Sometimes it pays to be patient. So hopefully these 3 tips help you. Like I said, it's not always about the technical aspects of the camera or composition. Sometimes it's just these little things that can contribute to making your landscape photography more successful. Things you might not think to ask about or things you might not do if you haven't been out with another landscape photographer. So these were the 3 themes that came from that workshop, both from the scouting leading up to it and while we're on the workshop. Things like just adapting to the weather, patiently absorbing a scene, and not endlessly chasing the light. Those are the 3 things that really helped lead to capturing some amazing images from the Great Smoky Mountains. Anyways, I hope you liked this video and found those 3 tips from the workshop helpful. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see future landscape photography content from me, including tips, tricks, behind the scenes, and mini gear reviews, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you for watching.